I'm in control. Usually I get this opportunity when he's not here, so it's a little, I have to be a little bit more restrained. Shelley usually restrains me. Rob definitely restrains me. And you guys, I don't know. I'm not convinced that everybody's quite pumped to be here this morning. I'm not quite convinced that you're all as excited about me speaking as I am about speaking. So, here's what I'd like you to do. I want everybody to stand up. Since this is my thing, I want you to turn around and give somebody around you a holy high five or a holy fist bump. Just don't punch them in the head. Now that's better. Everybody's smiling. Everybody's happy to be here. We could almost go home, really. There's what more can I say to make you more happy today? But this is the concluding message in the series that we've been doing here at LifeBridge for the last number of weeks called Joyful Mission. And for those of you who have been at LifeBridge for a long time, this is a way for you to think through how you can be more joyful on the specific mission that you have. And for those of you who are newer to LifeBridge and you're still trying to figure out where a relationship with Jesus fits into your life, this is an opportunity for you to discover how God is writing those chapters of your story right now. In the past few weeks, Rob's intent and our intent as a church and the leadership is to let everybody realize that you're here for a purpose. And then the purpose isn't necessarily your job or living in the house that you live in or any of that. You were created for a very unique purpose that God created you for. And you're part of this church community for a very unique purpose that God has you here for. And, once you realize, and once I've realized that I was created to be in relationship with God, and once I got to the place that I have been in a relationship with God and it's been growing, each of us needs to realize that we have a very special thing in our possession. We are the keepers or the stewards of the story that is Jesus' story. And that's a very, very appropriate thing this time of year, because in the midst of our culture, in the midst of the busyness of what's going on in the world this past few weeks and leading up to today and tomorrow with the stores still being open and people having been busy trying to get ready for Christmas, very few of them, and maybe very few of us, have given consideration to the fact that it's really not about what we see going on in our culture in this mad rush to get ready for Christmas. The story of Christmas is really the story of Jesus. It's the beginning of the story of Jesus about why he came here, and that's what we're really supposed to be celebrating. That's really what the whole point of it is, even though our culture has twisted that. And it's a very powerful story, and we're the keepers of it. And we learned a couple weeks ago that if we've come to the place where Jesus is the leader of our life, we have a relationship with Jesus, now I have a very special, unique story that is David's spiritual story. My story in my life connecting with who Jesus is. What my life was like before I met Jesus, what my life was like while I was trying to discover who Jesus was, and then when I committed my life to following him, letting him be the leader of my life, wow, what a difference my story has been like. What different ways my life has been since that time. And continues to be as I grow deeper and deeper and deeper in this relationship. And you all have a similar story. But yours is unique. Yours is different. Yours is not better than mine. It's just different than mine. And then what a cool thing it is when you get in a place where everybody gets to share a little bit of their story and you hear that your story is very powerful, yet different than mine, but it all comes and intersects with one point, and that's Jesus. Jesus is the unique common denominator to my and your stories. And these are awesome, exciting stories that we need to be prepared to tell whenever the opportunity presents itself. Last week, Rob went through the sail analogy. We had sailboards here, surfboards with sails on, with the whole intent of visualizing that we are made to sail through life. The S being that we are to be salt in this world, not just one individual piece of salt that I can be, but all of us together being the salt to season the culture around us, the community around us, the place where we live and work. We get to be God's ambassador. And that's a pretty important and special job to have, to represent God in wherever we live, work, or play. We get to be God's image. We get to show people what God is like through how we live our lives. Sometimes we do a really great job of that, and other times, not so much. And in the end, we get to be God's light. Not Ed Light, but God's light. And this is, often Christmas is kind of like the season of lights, right? Everybody puts lights on their houses, but they don't realize that the light that they really need to be connected with and the light they need to be shining is Jesus' light. So, if you haven't got a chance to be here for all of the services, you can watch messages from the last few weeks online at lifebridge.ca. And for those of you, this is a marketing thing, whoever said that, Sheldon, is that we also now have them available in MP3 format. So you can download them and take them on your mobile device and listen to them in the car or while you're running, walking, or doing whatever. So we want to make sure that if you miss something, that you have a chance to hear it. If you want to hear it again, you get a chance to sort of let God work it through in your mind. So we make those resources available. And now that we kind of come to where we are, the end of this series on joyful mission, we have to realize that our responsibility is now not to keep the story of Jesus to ourselves and not to keep the story of what Jesus has done in my life or your life to ourselves, but we're supposed to tell it with excitement and enthusiasm. And you know what that word's called? It's called being an evangelist, or doing evangelism. And immediately as soon as I say that, Rob said it last week, but as soon as I say it, when you hear the word evangelist, a certain picture comes into your mind. Could be a really good picture, like a picture of somebody like Billy Graham, or it could be a picture of another evangelist that the media has maybe not represented God so well, or that just, you know what. You know exactly, I don't even have to tell you. You have a picture in your mind of what that kind of evangelist is. And then if I say, okay, guess what? You get to be an evangelist. That's part of your job. And some of you would go, whoa, I don't want to be like that. Really? Well, you know why that is because our culture and our mindset and our media and good representations and bad representations, whatever it is, or maybe it's just the fear that's drawn up inside us makes us think, I don't want to be that. So I came across this little video. And this video will give you a picture of some of the things that are probably going on in your mind when you hear the word evangelist or evangelism, and what you maybe don't want to be, and at the end, what you probably do want to be. Yes, Julie's been praying, and here comes the snow. What's up with that? Okay, we should all start praying now that the snow will stop. Amen. Those guys are called the Skit Guys. I was at a conference in June, and I had a chance to see them live, and it was 2 hours of that insane laughter. Like, they are unbelievable. But the end part there wasn't meant to be funny. That really is their story. They were two friends in high school, and one was a guy who had grown up going to church and was a Christian, and he invited the other one, Eddie, to come to church. And Eddie came because he was invited, and his life was changed. And, there's so many other things that we try to let get in the way of being the evangelist that we could be, whether it be bumper stickers or tracts or crazy songs or whatever. And really all it comes down to is relationship. And so the whole idea of the word evangelist or being a bad word or a word of something that we wouldn't want to be is even becoming kind of crazy. Because did you know that the corporate community has now started using the word evangelist? Google, I think you've heard of them once or twice, you probably use it every day, has come up with actual paid people who are called Google evangelists. There's a guy named Avinash, and he wrote a whole book on Google Analytics, and he is the Google Analytics evangelist. He is, I've heard him speak, I bought his book. He is excited and passionate about Google. Not just because he's paid even. Like, he really actually is very, very excited about the whole prospect of being Google's evangelist. And there are companies now that I've actually seen people with business cards, and on their business card, their title is, where did I put that? Their title is Digital Marketing Evangelist, or Social Media Evangelist, or the company's Brand Evangelist. So if the corporate world thinks, this is a great idea, we want people to be evangelists. We want people to be excited. We want to find the person or the people who are so excited about our company that they would represent us with that passion to get the word out, to get the news out about what we do to help benefit other people's lives. If the corporate world can do that, then wait a second. Why should we, who say that we're followers of Jesus, that we are the keepers of Jesus' story, that we are now the ones who get to tell it, should we not be so excited about the opportunity and the mission and the job, if you want to think of it that way, of being able to go out and just tell people what a difference Jesus can make and a relationship with Jesus can make in their life like it has in yours? There's no shame in that. But yet, I cower. Yet, you've cowered. There are times that we've had the opportunity that we kind of sink down and we kind of go into the back and we just don't want to talk about it. Because we think somehow that we're going to be judged in some way. Would we feel that way if we're as passionate about Sheldon as Sheldon is about the Montreal Canadiens? Does he ever cower saying that he's not a Montreal Canadiens fan? He probably should, since they finished in almost last place last year. But because there's no hockey season this year, none of us are even talking about hockey. But then there's other sports teams, and there's other brands, and there's other things that we get really excited and passionate about, and we'll talk to people about that all day. So, should I be ashamed to be a Jesus evangelist? Should you be ashamed to be a Jesus evangelist? I hope not. The question is really, am I doing a good job representing this relationship that I have with God? Are you doing a good job with it? And I think sometimes we're not, because we aren't really very intentional about how we go about it. And we're not very strategic. And now as soon as I say, oh, well, you know, the word strategic, or you're going to talk about strategy, that's just a little bit too corporate for church. Don't you think? And maybe the word strategy makes your eyes roll around in the back of your head and you go, oh, no, here it goes. That's why he's wearing a tie. I just happened to try to find a preaching tie, and it had to be orange. And this is my new attempt at trying to brighten your day. Do you realize that every successful small business has a strategy? Do you realize that every large corporation, Google, Apple, Microsoft, whoever, they have a strategy? Do you realize that the most successful nonprofit organizations that are trying to get their cause out to the world, they have a strategy of how they're going to do it? And yet, so often, the church does not have a strategy. So often, we, as members of the church, do not have a strategy. What about your personal life? Do you have strategies in your personal life? I know Cliff does, or he did. He had lists and lists and plans, and I've talked to a few other people, and they have their strategy for how they're going to get to certain places all mapped out. Is there anything wrong with that? Not really. So if we can have a personal strategy, and businesses can have a corporate strategy, why not a spiritual strategy? Now, this week, not tomorrow and the next day, but in the days following Christmas leading up to New Year's, what happens a lot in the week leading up to New Year's? People make New Year's resolutions. Now, once you hear New Year's resolution, some of you say, I never do New Year's resolutions. Others of you say, I absolutely do New Year's resolutions. Well, it so turns out that just last week, the Journal of Clinical Psychology published a study they did of a whole survey on people who made resolutions a year ago this week. Leading up to New Year's Day 2012, they interviewed a whole whack of people about whether they made resolutions or didn't make resolutions, and if they made resolutions, what they were. Are you curious? What do you think the #1 resolution was in this time last year leading into 2012? Well, let's take a look. The #1 was lose weight. Where's my slide? Lose weight. 45% of people who made the resolution to lose weight in 2012. Other people, the #2 one was get organized. #3 was spend less and save a little bit more. #4 was enjoy life to the fullest. I don't even know what that means exactly. #5 was get fit and healthy. Gym memberships skyrocket this time of year. People were buying all kinds of useless fitness equipment on late night infomercials this time of year. #6 was learn something exciting or learn something new. #7 was quit smoking. #8 was help others accomplish their dreams, which I thought was quite interesting because usually New Year's resolutions seem to be very self-centered. So this was quite a surprise to me. #9 was fall in love. I don't know how you have a resolution. This year I'm going to fall in love. And #10 was spend more time with family. So 45% of people in the United States, this was an American survey, but it probably translates pretty closely to our Canadian culture. 45% of people said, I made a resolution last year. Now the question is, how many people do you think were successful in accomplishing or achieving their resolution? Any guesses? 2 people. Well, the actual number was right about where you're thinking, 8%. 8% of people who said they were making a resolution actually accomplished the resolution. Now, why do you think that is? Because resolutions really, the definition by Webster's dictionary is that a resolution is the act of determining. So I can determine that I'm going to change something, or I can determine I'm going to do something, but what usually drives people to miss the mark in accomplishing or achieving is the strategy. They have no plan, right? And we, in our lives, whether it's a resolution or if we really get serious and we put a serious strategy and plan together to get in shape or lose weight or plan a super vacation or do something special for our career or fall in love. When we're successful at it, it usually comes because we weren't only determined we were going to, we actually put some sort of a plan in place. And how do we do that? Well, typically we start to do some research, right? We try to get some knowledge. So how can we get more educated on how to accomplish this particular thing? So we read books or websites, or we ask people for advice, or how did you lose weight, or what gym did you go to, or we gather the information. We create some sort of a plan on how we're going to actually implement all these things that we've now, all this knowledge on how to accomplish it. And usually there's money involved. So we have to, budget somehow to make sure we can accomplish the strategy or accomplish the plan. So what are some personal examples? Well, this was quite a few years ago now. But I determined, and it was a New Year's resolution, but it came with a strategy and it came with a plan. I determined I was going to get in shape. I was going to work out 3 to 4 times a week. And so I researched all the gyms in the area. I found out which ones had personal trainers and what the costs were and what was close nearby. I decided that I was going to map out. I would work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and sometimes Saturday. I knew exactly what time of the day I would work out all those days so that I was committed to it and it was in my schedule. I figured out how much it was going to cost me for the gym membership. And I set that money aside in my budget. But the thing that really helped me is that I got my best friend to be my accountability partner. I got him to determine that he was going to follow the exact same strategy. So every Monday morning that we went to work out, that I was going to work out, I knew he was going to be there. So what made this really successful was on the days that I didn't feel like getting up, I knew that he was going to call me to say, get your butt in the gym, let's go. And so I did this. I was in good shape. It worked. I looked actually for the picture. There is a picture. Shelley has it. She can attest to it. It's the best shape I was in my life. I had the guns a-blazing, and it was good. It was good. And I felt good, and I felt good that I accomplished the goal. Now, of course, as soon as the strategy started to wane on both of our parts, my friend and I, things started to unravel, and what you're left with is Stick Boy. The other strategy that I could think of that I really put a lot of effort into was I determined that a few years after I had become a Christian that I wanted to read the Bible through in 1 year. So I did some research. I found a Bible that is specifically a 1-year Bible, broken out day by day, tells you what to read on what days. And I determined exactly what day I would read, what time of the day I would read, that I would read every day. But again, what really made it work was that I had a partner to read with. And so this was prior to getting married. It was the year before Shelley and I got married, and we determined we would read the Bible together. Now, being the administrator that she is, she was the perfect one to be partnered with in this endeavor because she kept me on track. Because many times I'd gotten through Genesis, but then as I got into other books of the Bible, like Deuteronomy and Leviticus, every other time I tried this, I'd kind of hit a wall and go, oh, this is too hard sledding, and I'd give up. But I knew that every day we not only read it, sometimes together and sometimes not together, but we'd often talk about it. And she'd call me, and she'd say, so did you read last night? And I'd say, no, I'll call you back in 20 minutes. And so, whenever I didn't feel like it, she kept me on track. Whenever she didn't feel like it, I kept her on track. That didn't happen nearly as much as the other way around. But it was a really great thing to do as an individual, but it was an awesome thing to do as a couple. And it was a really great thing for us to do as a couple as we were preparing to get married. So we became very intentional. We became very strategic. And that's what made it happen. There have been lots of other resolutions. There's been lots of other strategies that I've tried to come up with in my time, but I've failed miserably because I didn't have a really good strategy. And I bet you you're sitting there this morning and you're saying, yeah, I can think of a lot of things that I determined I would do. I had good resolution, good resolve to try to do it, but because I didn't have a plan and because I didn't have any accountability, it went out the window. We're all there, all of us. So this morning, I don't want you to just come here and then go from here and say, yeah, it was a little bit of an entertaining sermon, funny video, some good Christmas carols. I want us all to walk away from here and say, I learned something practical. Because at the end of it, if you're just going to walk out and it's going to be all theory, then having some sort of a strategy on how you're going to be on your joyful mission and how you're going to be a good representative to God outside of this place is probably not going to happen. So today, what I want to look at this morning and the rest of our time is I want us all to struggle and wrestle with. How on earth, once I leave this building, how in 2013 am I going to be more strategic in a really good way, in a really genuine way, in a really sincere way to represent God in my workplace, in my neighborhood, with my friends, with my family, and with the people that I care about. And so my goal today is to help you walk out of here with a couple things that you can do practically to accomplish this goal. Call the worship team up for a couple songs, just to give you a break from me. So have you ever heard of this guy in the Bible named Paul? The Apostle Paul? It's kind of like the super Christian in the Bible. He wrote, a good chunk of the New Testament. My biblical knowledge is not so wise as to know exactly how many books that was, but I'm sure our wise pastor can answer that question for you later. That's why we keep him around. He knows things that others of us don't. He's so wise. So wise his head can't hold the knowledge and it's popped all his hair out. I don't know, that wasn't in my notes. Where did that come from? You see, I can get away with this because I've known him since I was 10, right? So I knew him when he had lots of hair, and I know him when he has not so much. He's a good sport about it, too. Paul was on a mission from God. But not until after he had this incredible encounter face-to-face with Jesus on a road, which was called the road to Damascus. He had been absolutely everything opposite of God. He'd been in opposition to God his whole life leading up to that moment. He not only hated Jesus, he hated anyone who followed Jesus, and his goal was to basically make their lives miserable or to kill them. He was in such opposition to God that Jesus himself had to come and make him stop. And this is the risen Jesus. Jesus had died and left the earth. And Jesus encountered Paul on the road as he was traveling to do some of his mean stuff. Jesus encountered him as a bright and blasting light that knocked him to the ground and really got his attention. So bright it blinded him. So compelling that it made him fall to his knees. His life was radically transformed. He realized without a shadow of a doubt that he had encountered Jesus, the Son of God. And then he spent a long time trying to figure out what on earth was the significance of Jesus, not only for his life, but for how he could now go and represent Jesus throughout everywhere he went. He was so convinced that Jesus was the Savior of the world, that Jesus was the Son of God, that Jesus came as this baby that we're going to celebrate on Christmas Eve tomorrow night and on Christmas Day. And that his mission was that Jesus came to change Paul's life, to change my life, to change your life, and to change everybody's life that will allow it. He was so convinced that he decided he would make the most out of every opportunity that he had. Let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 19 to 27. Paul says, though I am free, because he belongs to Jesus now, he's free and he belongs to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I become like a Jew, to win the Jews. To those under the law, I become like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those who are under the law. To those not having the law, I become like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but I am under Christ's law, or under Jesus' law. I do this so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I become weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all men and women, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do this for the sake of the gospel, or the good news, the story of Jesus, that I may share in its blessings. So there's a lot going on here, right? The essence of this passage is simply this, that Paul's saying, people matter more than anything. My purpose on life is to represent God because people matter more. People matter more than my comfort and where I live. People matter more than my identity, what people think about me, whether they respect me or not. People matter more. Now, when I look at my life, do I look at how I interact in my life to say the people around me matter more than anything else? More than my job, more than my house, more than the money, more than the savings plan, more than the vacation, more than how fit or unfit I am? Do people matter more? He says he becomes a slave. In verse 19 he says, I make myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. This is not the kind of slave that we think of when we hear the word slave, where somebody is forced against their will to do something and serve someone, and they're beaten and disparaged and made nothing. No, what he means here is a slave, someone who is fully 100% dedicated, all in, 100% to do whatever it takes to serve their master, the Master Jesus. Now I look at my life and I say, am I 100% all in? Are you 100% all in? Yeah, well, I know I'm not. I say I want to be. Oh yeah, I really want to be. You probably say, yeah, I want to be all in. I want to give 100%. I want to put away all this other stuff. It doesn't matter. But I don't live like that. You don't live like that. Every single day, I become selfish. I am selfish, selfish, selfish. And so are you. Yep, that's right, I said that. You're selfish. I can say it because I am one. I know from where I speak. But why does he say that he wants to be a slave to all men, to be a servant to all men, to win as many as possible? He is passionate. He knows this is what he was created for. This is his joyful mission. And he is joyful about it. He basically is choosing to adapt his life to fit in any circumstance, whether he's with Jewish people, to become like Jewish people. To be like in his culture, in his day, there were a lot of people with a lot of traditions and a lot of cultural things and a lot of stuff. Now, we don't see that as much in our lives. Like in our culture, it seems like anything goes. Right? But he would do whatever it took in whatever situation it was, as long as it didn't conflict with who he really was and what God really was. He did whatever he could to be like these people so that he could do what? Build relationships with them. It wasn't about having the bullhorn. It wasn't about having the bumper sticker. It wasn't about wearing that shirt that blazes that I'm a Christian. It was about relationship. He needed to get to know people. He needed them to get to know him. And the plain and simple reason for it was so that he could achieve the credibility amongst them in the relationship to have the right to share who he really was and what motivated him to be their servant. He'd do whatever it took to meet their needs. But he did it while he was building relationships with them and not letting all the stuff in their culture get in the way. And we got to look at life the same sort of way. You know, what am I doing to get to know the people who are in my community or that I work with or that are, you know, we want sometimes, I think, as church people, we are passionate about what God has done for us, but we get so caught up with that we just need to kind of go in and blast people with this message and then run away. And it doesn't work that way. It takes time. And it's supposed to be fun, presuming that you like people. Our job is to like people. Our job is to love people. And our job is to look at who they are, get to know them, get to know what their real needs are, and then try our very best to meet the need that they have, whether it's a relational need, whether it's a physical need, whether it's a financial need, food, clothing, whatever it might be. Everybody that you come in contact with, as you're building relationships with them, the more you get to know them, the more you get to realize what their needs are. And usually it is relational. Usually they're struggling in a relationship in their marriage, or they wish they had one. They want desperately to fall in love. We all desperately want to fall in love. We were created to love. And you know who we were created to love? Jesus. That's why that desperate longing to love and be loved is in us, because it was planted in us by our Creator. And everybody has that. And no relationship, as great a marriage as I have with Shelley, and it is awesome. Almost 17 years in February, it'll be 17 years. 17 years of awesome relationship. But yet she cannot meet all my needs the way God can meet my needs, because He created me and He knows me better than I know myself. You know, people are desperate for love. People are desperate for relationship, and we have the solution for that. And the solution isn't us. We're just the messenger. We are the evangelist. Now I don't even know where I am anymore. Oh yes, I'm at LifeRidge. I thought this was a dream. Always dreamt of being a public speaker. It never goes this well. Okay, so here's a personal story from my life. Just one. It was a couple years ago, I thought, I got to get out of my circle of friends here at this church. And all my friends are people who come here. All the people I work with are, you know, in ministry, or my family's, you know, whatever. I need to get out, and I got to make more friendships, and I got to build some relationships so that I can actually do what my mission is, which is to get to know some people so that I can show them how God has transformed my life. And so there's this group of people that started meeting in Halifax once a month, and they were calling themselves the Halifax Social Media Group, something like that. And to you, this probably sounds incredibly boring, but for me, it was quite interesting, because I'm very interested in technology and marketing and social media. It is through this group that I first learned about Twitter. And at the time, I thought, it sounds like such a stupid thing. But they convinced me, no, it's not stupid at all. And now I'm on Twitter. And I learned how to be on Twitter. And I started to build these relationships, and we would talk about Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and websites and all this stuff, which really, you know, excites me, and probably not so much you. But some of you actually understood all those words I just said, and others of you are like, what on earth is he talking about? Pinterest? What? And so I still don't quite understand Pinterest, but apparently that's all mostly women anyway, so. Oh, did I say that out loud? So I went there and I started to get to know them, but I got a chance to share my passion for using social media in a ministry context through churches. They thought that was kind of weird on one hand. On another hand, they thought it was quite interesting. Wow, that's kind of cool that churches would actually want to use Facebook somehow to communicate within their community. And then it led to me having opportunities to have conversations about why I went to church. And I even got opportunities to invite some of those people to this church. Unfortunately, none of them are here today. But, you know, they're still friends of mine online. Gordon will say you can't have friendships, genuine relationships online, but we will agree to disagree. So the reality is, you need to find something that you like to do that is in a network of people that you're already interested in, and then just be you. But you have to be you by developing relationships. And so I figured maybe that would be one way that you could kind of see how perhaps you could consider doing something like that. Let's look at some practical steps. 4 practical steps that I can use in 2013, that you could use in 2013. They're so simple, all of us can use them. And the first one basically is this, is that we need, as we're building relationships with people who don't know who Jesus is number one, and this is in your bulletin insert if you want to fill in the blank, you need to learn their story. You need to learn their story. You need to be interested in them as a person and not as a project, okay? Like, I want you to all be very, very clear. This mission that we have as Christians, this is not a project. This is not a job. This is supposed to come out of our passion. We need to be interested in people for who they are, and we need to get to know them for who they are. We need to learn about their highs and their lows, what makes them tick, what makes them excited and happy, and what makes them, some of the things they're struggling with. We need to show interest in them and what's going on in their lives, individually, in their career, in their family, or whatever. Like, as you meet somebody, all of us will probably have an opportunity to go to a party at some point this Christmas season where we're going to meet somebody we've never met before, just because they're at this party or home gathering. We'll have no trouble saying, "So, what do you do?" We'll have no trouble asking them what their favorite sports team is or how frustrated they are that the NHL is still on strike. We'll have no trouble talking about, "Hey, did you see, what do you think of the snow?" We can talk about weather all day. We can even get kind of brave and talk about politics if we really want to go down that road. But religion is off base, isn't it? Should it be? Why? It doesn't have to, and the reason we think it needs to be off base is because we think, and people think that we're going to get judged for being like some of those characters in the video, right? We just need to be us and start asking them just simple questions about their spirituality. Did you ever go to church when you were growing up? Do you go to church now? Hey, do you ever go to church on Christmas or Easter? Is that a bad question to ask? I hope not. So we just need to start being a little bit intentional about trying to bring that in. Not the first question. Get to know them, but get to know about their history with church. As you get to talk to people, I had a really nice dinner meeting with a friend of mine from high school not that long ago. And I was asking him, I was practicing some of this. So I was asking him what has been going on in his life the last few years. I got a lot of his story. But because he's a pretty nice guy and he's not totally self-centered, he did start asking, "So, what about your life?" People will ask you about your story. And a couple weeks ago, Rob shared the sort of map-out plan of how we need to start preparing our spiritual story. He didn't ask specifically about my spiritual story yet, but at one point we were talking about travel and vacations. And so I'd been asking him about the vacations he's been on. And he said, "So are you and Shelley going on any interesting trips in the next year?" And I said, "Oh, well, we're actually going to Honduras." He goes, "Oh, you're going on a cruise?" I said, "No, we're actually going to do some work down there with underprivileged kids and build a house, and we sponsor a child there." And he just kept asking more and more and more questions about this. "Well, how did you get involved in that?" "Well, our church does it." And he was totally enthralled by this. I'm not telling him my personal spiritual story yet. I'm not telling him about who Jesus is, but I'm telling him about stuff I'm involved in that is representing Jesus. And so he was totally interested in it. Where does this go? I don't know. But we have to be prepared to share our story and be transparent and let people know what's important to us. In our growth groups, several times I've had the opportunity to teach that Becoming a Contagious Christian series. We're just finished doing it in our group this year. And I often ask people who come to LifeBridge, and we are in this phase 3. Yeah, phase 3 plan. I should know what level I'm in, but they just tell me where to go when I show up. I often will ask people, "So is there anybody at LifeBridge that you would say is an evangelist?" And almost always, the name that comes back first is George Fadul. George Fadul, of all people, not Rob Laidlaw or Gordon McKenzie. George Fadul is the evangelist at LifeBridge. So I called up George this week and I said, "George, you're the evangelist." He goes, "Yeah, I am." He goes, no, he's very, very humble. He's like, "Well, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Tell me, what is your model for evangelism?" And he said to me, "Well, it all is built on something that Peter said in 1 Peter. And the verse is 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15, and it says, "Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have." Our world is hopeless. always be prepared to give a reason for the hope you have. What is our reason for hope? Jesus. My relationship with Jesus is what gives my life hope. The people you're connecting with, maybe even some of you here today are struggling with, I don't know that I have a lot of hope in my life. Well, I'll tell you, the answer isn't me. The answer isn't LifeBridge. The answer is Jesus. A relationship with Jesus. So number 3 is we then need to, after we've learned a little bit about them, and this doesn't all happen in like the first meeting, okay? You got this? We need to learn a little bit about them as our relationship develops. We need to let them get to hear a little bit about our story. And the third thing is to determine their spiritual curiosity level. So just try to create some questioning and start dialogues around spirituality that maybe even create a little bit of tension, to just try to figure out, are they even interested in beginning the journey of discovery of who or what a relationship is like with Jesus, or are they totally against it? And if they're totally against it, that's fine. That's their choice. I had that choice to make. You've had that choice to make. Many of you are here this morning because you've decided you are curious enough that you want to check things out, or you did at one point, and now you've got some of the answers. We just need to try to measure or get a temperature reading for their curiosity level of spirituality. And then the fourth one is start the spiritual relationship journey. Help them start the spiritual relationship journey. And it probably comes from the simplest of all things, which was the last little part of that video, which is all in just the invitation. After we've invested in getting to know who they are, after we've invested in sharing a little bit of our story, after investing in whether they're even curious enough to move along and get in motion, is to invite them. Almost every one of you who are here at this church came to this church or came to your spiritual journey because somebody invited you to come. Our culture does not think church is relevant. Our culture does not really think Christian spirituality is relevant. And so most people won't wake up Sunday morning and say, you know what? I think I'm going to go to church today. It happens, not often. It does happen. But more often what happens is, in a relationship, somebody invites you to start the journey, and they invite you to a place like this church. I started my spiritual journey 25 years ago when somebody invited me, who was a friend of mine, who was reading my spiritual temperature and curiosity. My life was unraveling. I was in a very low place. I was in desperate need of trying to figure out what in life is there that is more than what I'm living, because it's not working for me at all. I was lonely, and I was empty, and I had no purpose for my life. And this person said, they didn't even invite me, come to Sunday morning church service. They invited me to go tobogganing with a bunch of other church people. I was like, all right. And then afterwards, we went to the church, but it wasn't like very formal. It was very relaxed, and it was an opportunity to just ask questions. That's kind of like what our growth groups are like, right? So figure out when the timing is right to invite somebody, whether it's to come to a Christmas Eve service like we're having tomorrow night, whether it's to come for a series that we're starting, like the one we're starting in early January, to invite them to a growth group, to invite them, Rob mapped out a couple weeks ago that whole bridge illustration. Maybe you're just sitting over coffee and you're talking. Just ask them, maybe that's even part of the spiritual curiosity phase, is just asking them where they are on the journey, or if they're even on a journey spiritually. And there's so many resources available in our culture, right? Websites, and online messages, and books, and videos, whatever you think is relevant to them. And you'll know now because you've spent some time actually getting to know what they're like and what they like. So, you're probably sitting there going, okay, well, you give me these things, but this is all about me doing it to them, and me doing it in this stage, and me doing it in that stage, and I'm scared to do this by myself. It is a little bit scary to do it by yourself, but guess what? You weren't meant to be on a personal one-person mission all by yourself. You're not the only one. And you happen to be here at this wonderful little place that we call LifeBridge Community Church. You are meant to be on this journey in community. Right? God wants us to work together. God wants us to show and represent his love to people together. My story may be very interesting to some of you, and somebody else's story may be much more interesting, much more relevant. I have certain gifts. In one of the chapters of Corinthians, Paul talks about the different gifts that are in place in the body of the church. All of us are created unique. All of us are created different. As we go into this process, we need to rally each other around us. And maybe maybe I know Cliff's story, and I know somebody else who would really resonate with Cliff's story. And George has no trouble telling his story or all kinds of other stories. Right? And so people need to be exposed to see that God isn't like me. And that's a really good thing. God is like all of us. As you look around this room, there's a little representative of God in all of us. And it's very unique, and it's very special, and it's very creative. We are part of a community. You see this map here? You have no idea how long this took to do. If you want to know, you can talk to Shelley. I have no idea what happened to this poor little string. But this is a map that represents, don't get too close to the speaker. This is a map that represents all the families that are here in our church and where we live as we spoke out from this place here that is Lifebridge Community Church here in Auburn Drive High School. We live in a community, but it's not the type of community of communities past where the local church used to serve this area and people used to walk and be really close to the church. Look at how far geographically we spread around this region of Halifax, Dartmouth, Bedford, Sackville, and what is the Halifax Regional Municipality. This is a beautiful picture of how God has taken people from all points and brought them into this one place to become the community of Lifebridge. No matter who you intersect with in this coming week, in this coming year, there's somebody that geographically even is situated near people that you're already caring about, that you're in relationship with, that you're getting to like and love, and that you want them to understand what a difference God can make in their life. Time's up, he says. That's good, because I'm on the last page. So I guess my question and my challenge to you is this. Will you start your joyful mission in 2013? Will you start it today? Will you commit to starting to work as an individual and as a community to make a difference in this church, in this community, in your workplace, in your neighborhood? This is exciting. This is what you're here for. And I want all of us to not just resolve that we're going to and try to make a good resolution. I'm going to represent Jesus better in 2013. I want you to actually try to figure out how. Have that accountability partner. That's the other beauty thing about working in community. Is there's somebody else here that cares as much about your friends as you do. And that can help you work through this process. We as the leadership of this church want to do that. We could send out all kinds of advertising, and I'm a marketing guy, so I'm all about that. But nothing is more powerful than the relationships that you'll make and the invitations that you will extend to the people who you already have relationship with. The relational equity outweighs anything we could ever afford to do from a marketing perspective or from a communication strategy. This plan is God's plan. This evangelism plan is Lifebridge's plan. This plan, this strategy is your plan. We want to mobilize you. We want to help you. We want you to be as passionate as we are about the people that are around us. So I just want to challenge you. Who's with me? Will you go this year? Will you come with me? Will you invite me to go with you? Being in here every Sunday morning by ourselves is just a really nice little club. It is a family. We do care for each other. We are changing. Our lives are changing. But our real reason for being is all the people who are not sitting in these seats. Tomorrow night, you have a very unique opportunity. You get a chance to invite somebody to church if you want. Did you know that Christmas Eve is the one time that most people who don't go to church would actually even consider it? You've got 30 hours to extend an invitation. But if you can't, you've got an entire year, 2013, to come alongside somebody, get to know who they are, share your story, encourage them to come along on the journey with you, and to become a part of a community where God is using people to change lives, and where lives are being changed so that my life and your life and their life can be different in 2013 than it was in 2012. Let's all work with this together. It makes a difference for people and their eternal destiny.